And we are recording. We are live, ladies. I'm already starting to see some of our participants coming on in. So good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everybody.
Or good evening, I should say, for Miss Burrows, who is on the other side of the world right now.
How about all the Janus girls over on the other side of the world, sitting
right.
over in London, right? It's the end of their day.
So most of us are on coffee, but some of us might be on happy hour already. Great. This is wonderful. So I see people are funneling right in. We are cruising. Great. Okay. Well, I mean, I think we're just about ready to kick it off. So Julie, if you'd like to do the official introduction.
I'm more than happy to. Thank you, Miss Garrido. I appreciate it. I want to thank everyone for attending today. We're so excited. This is our second annual women's panel, the Great Women of Denver. And I will tell you that we love doing this with our sponsor, Janus Henderson. Thank you, you guys, for one. Thank you for everything you did and helping with that sponsorship. But last year we did this panel discussion. We had 3 wonderful women and there were about 150 of us on the call. And it was right after COVID kicked in. And it was just there was so many great comments and texts coming in. I moderated it last year and people were like, thank you for doing this. This is wonderful. And it was just the feeling of love came through. And I think you're going to see some of that today as we talk to 3 great women about how they're changing the world of data and changing the world, period. So what we're going to go ahead, I'm going to do a little housekeeping and then I'm going to introduce who we have on the line with us, all these beautiful ladies. We're not going to use the question little area here. We're going to use or raise your hand, Q&A or raise your hand. We're going to work over in the chat. The reason why is we want people collaborating. So we really welcome your input, any good stuff you can say about what's going on. And I'm going to start with, if you were on the first annual panel, then please let us know over in chat so that we know that, we've got a following from last year. So we are recording this session. So if you don't want to be any part of that, let us know or hang up. How about that? But we are recording this session. And we also ask you to be patient with us. We've got a lot to go through today. Kalia is going to be talking to these 3 ladies at a pretty fast pace. So at the end, if we have some time left, we'll hit your questions. But if we can't get to them, we will definitely send them out to the different panelists and see if we can get some answers back for you. So be patient. There's a lot of good information that's going to come out of the call today. So today I am honored to have working with 5 great women on this. The first one is Ron Bardini, and she, as I mentioned before, helped Kalia put this together. She's our premier sponsor. She runs a ladies group, one of the ladies groups, right? Well, Ron, you've got a couple over at Janus Henderson. Okay, and so she's been great along the way. Thanks for all your hard work and just gathering everyone up and working closely with Kalia. And then we have rockstar Kayla Garrito, who many of you know, who leads many of our events. She is our CMO and co-founder at Great Data Minds. She has a passion for women, including running her own organization on the side called Healthy Women Leaders. I recommend you go ahead and sign up for that one too. We all need to be staying healthy as we do all the great work that we're doing. One of my true favorites in the Denver area, Miss Sharon Allpress. I love her. She is such an inspiration. She's doing some really great work over at DCP Tech Ventures. And she's going to talk to you about, different types of organizations like Ventures and how they're making a difference to their motherships and to also the vertical that they're in. Jessica Iriarte, I think I met you probably 5 years ago through another partner, and I was always impressed. And I think another woman at Janus recommended that we reach out to Jessica and get her on this call. I said, I know Jessica, but she is going to talk to us. She's over at Vroom right now, and she's going to talk to us about breaking the gender barriers in data. So she came from oil and gas, so that's pretty big. That's a pretty predominantly male vertical, and so looking forward to hearing from you, Jessica. And Miss Lisa Fritz, who's just happy all the time. She's going to talk to us about Artfully managing explosive departmental growth. And she is the global head of Q&A at Janus Henderson. So all of these great women, thank you for joining us. Let's get the party started, Miss Kalia. I'm handing you the reins.
Thank you very much. So before we get into our panel discussion, I will hand it over to Rowan Bardini, who can give us a little bit of background information on Janus Henderson.
So my name
I think
is
you're, oh, there you, no, you're not muted.
Oh, sorry about that. I was just going to say thank you for that introduction. My name is Rowan Bardini, and I'm a product owner and an agile coach within the global technology team here at Janus Henderson Investors. I'm also a co-lead of the Women in Technology Employee Resource Group that we have here as well. So I'd like to just start by saying that Janus Henderson is extremely proud to sponsor the second annual Great Data Minds Women event. And for those of you who are not familiar with Janus Henderson, we exist to help our clients achieve their long-term financial goals, and we're committed to adding value through active management. And Janus Henderson is not just invested in our clients' goals, but also in the success of each of our employees. We have exceptional benefits, development opportunities, and a dynamic, fun, and inclusive culture. A role at Janus Henderson is more than a job. It's a place where our clients, communities, and colleagues experience powerful connections. Connections like the one here with Great Data Minds Women, and creating this platform to bring these fabulous ladies together to share their inspirational stories. A career at Janus Henderson is about connecting you to what matters, and that's our employee value proposition. And we focus on that in 4 distinct ways. The first is purpose, roles where you can make a real impact. Second is people, which is our greatest asset, and that's where we have strong trust, communication, and collaboration. Third is through opportunity, supporting your ambitions and investing in you and your goals. And fourth is the Janus Henderson way of life, reflecting the values and priorities of our people and communities. I'm proud to say that I've been at the firm for 2 years now, and I've seen each and every one of those values in action firsthand. It feels great, not just to love your job, but to love the company family that you're part of. Again, it's truly an honor to sponsor this fantastic event. Thank you, Great Data Minds Women, for the opportunity, and can't wait to hear from our panelists today.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Rowan. I have to say, like, when I spoke to you and Lisa in our prep call, like, it definitely comes straight through that you both feel very passionately about working for Janus Henderson. So we're definitely thankful that we have you as a sponsor today and that we've been able to do this collaboration. So let's just get right into it. I would love to start with some introductions from each of the panelists. And Miss Lisa Fritz, we'll kick it over to you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Lisa Fritz. So not going too far back, but I'm a Californian. I was born in California and moved out to Colorado, the lovely Colorado, in 1997. And I attended the University of Colorado Boulder. I'm 5'5" and was fortunate enough to get on the volleyball team. I don't know how it happened, but it was a wonderful experience. So my kids play sports, and I'm really happy with that. But I got a business degree with emphasis on IT and management. So I graduated in the lovely year of 2001. And so the bubble had bursted. I found myself in a quality assurance position at Oracle, which at the time was JD Edwards. That was not something I necessarily chose, but it kind of clicked. I think I got into an internship program, which kind of nicely guided me into my first role. I would say, around 8 years after that, I did a lot of the jumping between smaller companies, was in the healthcare industry, the retail industry, a lot of technology firms. I tended to gravitate more towards the technical side of quality assurance. So had some coding stints, definitely had an organization where I dove deep into the database, which is one of my favorites, by the way. And also I turned into a little bit of a process junkie. So I always really focused on the how. And so between those two blends of things, it started to shape my career a little bit. In 2010, I landed a job at Janus. And so I've been here for the past almost 11 years. I think this is probably the company, as Rowan stated, where I've had the most personal and professional growth, I would say. This company supported me through getting married. I have 2 children, have both of them here. I have a husband who's a stage 4 cancer survivor, so they were very supportive in that. And all the while too, I was able to grow professionally. So I had my first management job here. And my current role I received about 5 years ago. So Janus went into a global merger with Henderson. Really great experience for me and growth opportunity. I was tapped on the shoulder to build a quality assurance organization. out of practically scratch. So I think that's a lot of what I'll talk about today is the last 5 years of how we were able to grow. But my current job, I manage quality strategy, delivery processes and practices, which really centers around a lot of the SDLC and product management processes here. We have a transformation program to try to shift our ways into product-centric practices as well as enterprise agile practices. And then we have a new kind of stood up capability around product operations and governance. And so lastly, I think from a personal standpoint, I live on a couple acres, and so I love landscaping. My husband says if I buy another tree, he'll divorce me. We'll see about next year, right?
More trees. Get more
yes,
trees.
Exactly. I love the trees. I'm building a forest. I love golf, and I'm kind of proud to say I'm horrible in the kitchen. So.
Wow. Okay. That was a great introduction. I feel like I know you. There's so many things we can go for. That was great. Okay, I want to come and play golf in your forest.
I would love it. We do that, by the way.
I bet you do. I bet you do. Okay, thank you so much. So Sharon, let's go to you next. Can you give us a little bit of information on your background story and kind of how you came to be here today?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for hosting this panel and having us on here. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm Sharon Allpress. I am a Ventures Associate with DCP Tech Ventures. We are wholly owned and a part of DCP Midstream. We'll talk about that later. About me, I'm from the other side of the country. I'm from the East Coast. And I actually grew up until I was in second grade in Switzerland. And for us, the weekends were skiing in the Alps. And then my parents moved us to New Jersey, which was a serious buzzkill from this perspective. Skiing in New York State just didn't do it. It wasn't the same. So as soon as I graduated college, I headed out to Colorado, and here I am in Denver. I came out here under the guise of going to graduate school. Really, I came out here to ski. But through graduate school, I did I did my master's in remote sensing, so satellite imagery interpretation, and a whole involved with that is a lot of machine learning, a lot of applied statistics, working with a lot of big data. And then from there, I went into the consulting world and did a lot of consulting in the electric distribution fields and also gas and water distribution. So getting, the energy from the substations to people's homes, and then really building out and modeling the feeders, right? So we can build outage management systems to identify and automatically track when, say, there's an outage in an area. And so that was definitely being in the software side of the world, and then also being in the utility industry, very male dominated. So I had a lot of lessons there that I learned along the way. And then I decided I was getting a little bit bored of that area, and the SaaS startup world was kind of kicking up, and I saw what was going on in Silicon Valley, and I thought, hey, I want to do something with that. I want to get involved. So I pivoted and went to a startup on IoT sensors. So we were looking at IoT sensors and helping stream that data into for utilities, for industry in that area. And I got a lot of understanding and learning around the startup world, getting funding, getting your first customer, getting a reference customer. It's really, really, really hard, but learned a whole ton from there. And then from there, just stayed in the SaaS world, in the software world, getting into product, and then ended up back in the energy sector, working for DCP Midstream. So we're a natural gas midstream provider. And so from here, I've just been working in product for DCP, looking at trying to make sense of gobs and gobs of data, building out decision support systems with advanced analytics. And then from there, have transitioned over to the Tech Ventures group, where now evaluating startups to bring emerging technologies into DCP to help drive us and future-proof us as an organization, but then also thinking about the industry and how do we move our industry forward from a digital transformation standpoint. So that's a little bit about me and how I got here.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you are, and we'll talk a little bit more about what it is that you're doing, but it's not just what you're doing for DCP Midstream, it's also what you're doing for the industry. I think there's something really awesome in that too. So we'll talk about that in a second, but let's go right over to Jessica. Can you give us a little bit of your origin story?
Yeah, for sure. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I am so honored to be in this panel with Lisa and Sharon. Thank you, Kalia and Julie, for organizing this. So I'm gonna go from now to before. I'm gonna do a little bit different background of myself, but currently a senior manager of data science at Vroom. We're an e-commerce company that enables customers to buy, sell, and finance cars online. So you can basically buy your car and it will arrive to your house, like Amazon kind of thing. I have 10 years plus of experience working with data science and research in field operations. And before coming to Vroom, I was at Well Data Labs, which is a tech company here in Denver that does software for oil and gas. And I launched and grew a data science team, and I led the development of several robust models for basically automating and recognizing events in time series sensor data. So oil field technical data. The work that I led there resulted in several patent pending technologies, and it was featured in several conferences and publications. And throughout all my work there, I've also been really involved with the Society of Petroleum Engineers and held several roles in the Denver board and in conferences and committees. I do love to stay involved in the community and in events like this. Before working in tech and in the data world, I worked in oil field operations. So I'm actually a petroleum engineer by background. So I have a bachelor and a master's in petroleum engineering. So I started my career working as a field engineer in offshore platforms in South America. Also worked onshore in other countries in South America. And then I moved to Europe, where I was working more in like operations, kind of logistics, still in the oil industry. And that's where I made the decision to quit my job and move to Denver, moved to Golden to pursue my master's. And while I was doing my master's, I kind of like realized my love for data and for analyzing data. So that's kind of how I transitioned into the tech / oil and gas, and then now outside of the oil and gas. I'm currently a distinguished lecturer for SPE, and my talk is focused on applications of data science for time series data. And other than that, I love plants and gardening. It's like my passion, and you can see them maybe in my background. I love propagating plants and growing vegetables.
Nice. I do some of that myself too. Okay, great. Well, thank you everybody for those fabulous introductions. And I think to get things kicked off, we're gonna focus on you, Lisa. And like Julie mentioned, we are, kind of focusing on how you are artfully managing explosive departmental growth. And I know that your title, your job title doesn't necessarily, so your job title, Global Head of QA, doesn't necessarily encompass all of the things that you are actually doing on the day-to-day. And when we had our first prep conversation, a theme that kept coming up was about breaking limitations, or it's kind of like sort of not allowing a limitation, be it this is what your job entails, to kind of stop you from maybe doing more, stretching above or beyond kind of what your I don't know, standard set of of job responsibility should be. So I want to ask you a little bit more about that. Like, how do limitations or like perceived limitations, like this is your job and this is what you do, how has that ever come into play in your role? Have you allowed it to stop you, or have you just blasted through? And I think I know the answer already, but please share it with us.
You bet. So first and foremost, you talk about limits. I mean, everyone has, I reference it as a box, right? So boxes are important, right? So I have a job description, I have a boss, I have a company, I have objectives that I have to do. So first and foremost, I always try to nail my box. You know, have the best damn box you can build, right? No matter if you're happy with your job or if you're craving for more, you know, keep your house in order is what I always like to say. I think in the past, you know, this being on this panel was good because I sat down and it's good to do some self-reflection. And I looked back, you know, and I'm kind of talking more so the last 5 years, 4 to 5 years. I think what I tended to do is develop a what I call a spidey sense. And it kind of starts to venture beyond the box. So mentally and just how I engage, I remove my job description a little bit from that. And I work very heavily off of contextual awareness. So what that looks like for me is I really like org charts. Not so that I can hold people accountable, but it's more so I can understand the context and how the organization operates. So what are the teams? I'm a big people person in the fact that I like to meet people personally, understand what makes them tick, understand what they're good at, what they can teach me. Maybe there's something I can teach them, how everything's connected. So I tend to form good relationships, try to form good relationships across the organization. Operating models, so how does the organization get things done? It can be as simple of I have a new employee to onboard, what does that look like, to I have a big idea, how do I get funding through? Culturally speaking, a lot of my job is trying to change ways of working and transform the organization. So I paid a lot of attention to cultural pockets across the organization and what amount of change the organization or pockets of it can actually handle, or what's the risk appetite, right? So it's good to know these things as ideas come up in your head. And then just overall, like you've got to know your corporate objectives, you know, no matter what level, you should be able to, like you get in a room with the CEO, be able to list off the corporate objectives. So just venture out mentally and emotionally out. And then also it goes inward too. So what I found, we all have good and bad days. I try to sit and think, gosh, that was a horrible day. Why didn't I like that? I tend to like harmonious environments. So if there's a day where there's a lot of conflict, I'm fine with conflict, but generally it's something that I don't like. I'm like, let's try to make this better. On the contrast, a really good day, right? What do I like about good days? I tend to like to win as a team. I like bringing everyone together. I like achieving the next big step or small step, I should say. And so knowing what you like and don't like is good. And then the thing that I'll hit a lot on too is your inner thought process. I think as women, and even particularly if you're young in your career, you have a lot of ideas, but it's terrifying to let them outside. So, you know, I try to build like a list of things internally of ideas that I have. And really the sweet spot here is if you're contextually aware and you know yourself, pretty soon there's going to be a convergence of where you have a great idea of something that you're highly motivated in that can add value to the organization. That's a gap that you're trying to fill. So an example in my career is, 5 years ago, they said, build a testing org, or excuse me, they said, build a quality assurance org. Well, the first thing I had to start with was just general testing practices. But I knew that in order to get good testing within the organization, we had to look broader and look at the upstream things. So we had to look at the software development lifecycle. So I started asking around of who owned it, what did it look like, how was it operating, and I got crickets. So I talked to a lot of people. I put up a proposal and I took ownership of it. I, talked to my boss, he vetted it out, and lo and behold, they gave me the software development lifecycle. So that's just, it wasn't part of my job description that you're going to do this. It's just something that where I had a desire to do it because I'm a process person. I think it would add value to the company. And I made a move.
And it worked out.
Yep.
That's great. So I think like one of the key things, a lot of what you're talking about is soft skills. You mentioned like using your spidey sense, and that's like kind of your intuition. That's sort of like what's going on. Speaking about contextual awareness, being aware of the things and the personalities and the business goals that are happening around you. And so I've long often thought, and you're absolutely proving it in what you've just mentioned, is that if you can use soft skills and really flex into your soft skills in a technical world, it's like a superpower. It's like a superpower. And I think that the departmental growth, the way that your career trajectory has gone is really, it's supporting that. So I think that's a fantastic bit of advice for everybody. So what are some of, it sounds like you've learned a lot of lessons along the way, like as you've gone through and you've tested and tried different things and, you know, built roles for yourself, broken through different perceived barriers. Like, what are some of the big lessons that you've learned along the way in your career?
Sure. I think trusting your gut is one, and building that confidence. I won't give details. This actually happened like 3 weeks ago. I was in a meeting with people probably well above my pay grade, and I kind of got a little hair at my tushy and put forth kind of a bold statement. I think it landed fine, but I got out of that meeting and was like, oh God, like a little like. And then, you know, some other things happened, and, you know, the things that I stated came to fruition. Like, so it was kind of like, it was a good, even, you know, now like a learning lesson, like it's okay to take a little risk and get your opinion and thoughts out there. The second piece is, you know, sometimes it's a tap on the shoulder. Sometimes you got to take what you want, and obviously respectfully so. You know, you're not trying to go take anyone's job, any of that nature. That's, you know, you have to be careful of that. But if you see a gap, like take it. And so, you know, keep your eyes open, like I discussed before. The third thing is iteration, right? So 5 years ago, I didn't lay out to a T everything that has happened thus far. It was very much, I think it would be a 1-year focus that I tended to do. Right, so what's next? So basically I went from testing, and then I added process ownership. And then I said, okay, well, in order for us to change, we need an organized transformation program. And then more recently, it's, hey, we have got a gap of product operations and governance. So put a pitch in for that. So it's very much an iterative cycle. And then as you start, or as I've started to expand, you know, we went from an 8-person organization to a 34-person organization over the past 4 years, and that costs money. And so I had to learn real quick, and I mean, I'm still improving this for myself, of presenting opportunity in terms of business value. And so incrementally, I had to go work with my boss, work with our budgeting process, you know, put up a very good business case for someone to invest in this capability. That was really hard at first, turning quality into value. But I had a great boss. I had some mentors along the way to help me do that. But if you can learn how to do that, that's going to really benefit both the company and your career.
Yeah, that is a fantastic piece of advice. And we do a lot of these continuous learning or educational sessions at Great Data Minds. And a common theme throughout this is anytime anybody has something they want to pitch to the company, you always have to attach business value to it. I think that's invaluable advice. Really great. Thank you so much, Lisa. Good knowledge bombs. Knowledge bombs coming around. Okay, let's turn, we'll turn the spotlight onto you, Sharon. And so what we're talking about is kind of the name of your sort of segment here is Active in the Middle of Innovation. And I know that you are working at the DCP Tech Ventures group. So it's kind of, I'm fascinated by what it is that you do on a day-to-day, and I don't want to try to paraphrase. So can you explain a little bit more about this really interesting role that you have?
Yeah, I'll take a little bit of time to do that, because there's a lot that encompasses it. And it's also very unique, I think, in its structure and also our charter of what we have going. So at DCP Tech Ventures, like I mentioned, we're wholly owned by Dcp Midstream. So we're a group within the organization. We report to the Chief Transformation Officer in the company. And what we do is we really look at ways to bring in emerging technologies into the company, and also thinking about, like I mentioned, future proofing, helping us accelerate, but not just technologies that are mature today. What we really focus on is that 3 to 5 year roadmap. Like, where do we want to be in 3 to 5 years from now? What is a young, emerging technology that is applicable? And again, like Lisa mentioned, like business case, right? One of the things I do all the time is building a business case for a particular, not just from a technology. We don't do technology for the sake of technology on its own. We partner with the business, understand the problems, see where the gaps are, scan the landscape, work with our partners in a number of ecosystems, universities, startups, early and growth stage, venture capital environments, accelerators. And we use those partnerships to crowdsource what's starting to be developed in the market that's applicable for us. And so we constantly have this pipeline and this funnel coming through. And so we think about things in business case and business value, not just in 6 months from now or a year from now. We look longer term. So it's challenging, but it's also really interesting because you get to look at everything that's out there and not just look at the technology individually, but then thinking about how does this all fit and piece together? What's our strategy and how's it going to look once it's matured and we've proved it out in the next 3 to 5 years? So we're constantly evaluating that. I look at the digital solution side. We also have an energy transition side, which my colleague focuses on, like carbon capture, CCUS, solar. I mean, so much stuff on that side as well. And I really look at it like I'm focusing on the data value chain. So I look at everything from IoT sensors, like how are we collecting data? So mechanisms that collects data, turn that into information. And then the next step along that, particularly that's important in the business value in the business case, is then how do we generate actionable insights from all of that information? Like, how do we drive our operations forward and create value, create efficiencies for the organization?
Yeah, I think never a dull day is like maybe how I would sum this up. It's fascinating because technology moves and changes so fast. And so you're looking at pieces of tech that are brand new, also trying to make sure that they're going to be sustainable, that they're going to be helpful for the company like 3 to 5 years out. I feel like your brain is working forwards and backwards at the same time, which is fascinating.
Yeah, we are thinking forward, and I love that perspective. And you're right, it's backwards as well, because we're a 70-year-old company. We have systems in place that have been here for 10, 20, 30 years. And so we have to make sure what we're bringing in also is somewhat backward compatible and can work with what we have today, because we can't rip and replace everything, right? I mean, that would be that would be ideal, but that's not realistic for us to be able to do. So yeah, you're constantly balancing all of that. And we just get to work with really, really great startups. And it's just mind-blowing what people are doing out there, what people are thinking about. And every day I go to work and I learn something new every day. I'm always learning.
Wow, that's wonderful. Okay, so the second question that I have for you is that when we were talking in our prep session, we sort of uncovered that you had unintentionally future-proofed your organization for COVID and remote work. I just would love for you to share that story with the audience, because I thought that was just so interesting how it kind of already, you seem to have been, the world goes remote, but you guys were like, we're already here. We're ready.
Yeah, so just to give everyone an overview of Dcp Midstream, right? So we're a natural gas midstream company. So we transport and process natural gas. We process 12% of the natural gas in the United States, right? So we're really important. It's an important part of the energy value chain for the country. And so given that, we have like 60,000 miles of pipeline, we have 40 processing plants across 5 states. So really, intensive, large operations. And like about 4 or 5 years ago, we embarked down this digital transformation journey. Our CEO had gone out to the field, doing tours, an anecdotal story, and he was asking folks that had been working at DCP for 30, 40 years, what has changed with your job? And there was a resounding nothing. And he went, uh-oh. And so we started this digital transformation journey. Anyway, fast forward a few years, we've gone into remote operations. So we're remotely operating a number of our plants from our corporate offices in downtown Denver. And then in addition with that, we've started to really look at all the data that we're bringing into the organization. So out of all of our plants, we were collecting, I ran a calculation at one point, we were bringing in about 7 billion individual time series data points a day. Jessica would love to talk to you more about time series and data science. But from that, tons of data, but not actionable. So we started building this, what we call internally, we're not marketing people, a decision support system, where we turn that data into KPIs and metrics where we can take action on and identify what's the most important thing that we should be looking at across our operational footprint at any given moment of any given day. So 24/7. So we built this out for a couple of years, and then COVID hit, and we also had remote operations. And we literally over a weekend moved all of our remote operations and all of that from downtown Denver into people's homes. So we didn't skip a beat. None of our plants went down. We just transitioned over. And then also we're all remote, and we could all 24/7 see the state of all of our plants, all of our operations across our footprint. And we really didn't skip a beat from, executive management point of view, making leadership decisions all the way through to operators making day-to-day, running of the plants. And it really helped us. Yeah, it really helped us future-proof for COVID, and we didn't skip a beat. Our CEO in some of our all-hands calls were like, "You guys, this is better than Netflix and any reality TV show. You've got to be on DSS watching this data all the time." Mm-hmm. And we posted our best half a year ever. Was that first half of COVID. So it really showed that, this future proofing is really important. And in retrospect, like looking back in hindsight at the end of 2020, our executive leadership said, you know what, this was one of the most important things that we had done ahead of COVID that we didn't realize at the time how critical it was going to be. And so we really doubled down on this future-proofing technology innovation, bringing in innovative technologies, companies, hardware and products and software into the organization.
Yeah. Wow. That's quite a feat. And I think it's extra awesome because of the legacy industry that is, natural gas. It's a big old behemoth, and you were right out front and had really prepared everything very well. So I think that's a fascinating story. Thank you so much, Sharon, for those insights. So Jessica, let's turn the spotlight to you now, ma'am. So I know what we talked about in our prep call was breaking we talked about breaking barriers in data. And then as our conversation went on, it was really gender barriers, cultural barriers, age barriers for you in data. So I am I'd love to hear more about what was, kind of the catalyst for you initially to even want to get into data and analytics and into the petroleum industry as well. It's kind of two things that you might not find, somebody young, somebody female working in.
Yeah. So something I didn't mention before, I'm originally from Venezuela. So I grew up in an oil town. So that kind of led me to start as a petroleum engineer and go in my undergraduate. I like math and physics, and it just made sense. And honestly, I love traveling, and the oil industry takes you to a lot of places to work. So that was also one of my biggest motivations, a little selfish, but so then I started working in the field, and I quickly realized I was one of the few women in the field. A lot of the times my crew, when I was working offshore in our boat, we were about 20 people in the crew, and it was me and maybe another female and then 18 men. and we'll, have 2 rooms to share. So that was interesting. But, initially, let me go back to the questions. What made you inspire? So initially, I was just fascinated by the operations, the logistics, just everything that goes into working in the oil field. And I felt like I had to also prove myself and that woman can do that job, kind of thing. Then, my career took me to other places. I worked in other places in South America. Then I moved to Italy. And then as a Latin woman working outside of Venezuela, in South America was still hard. Not hard, but, there are a lot of perceptions that you have to break. And then, when after working for a few years in operations, I realized I really wanted to be more technical. I really liked the data, and I like to dig into the technicalities, or like the physics, the math that I was going through, and not just the logistics of the operation. And that's what I decided to, quit my job, move to Golden, and pursue my master's. It was still a master's in petroleum engineering, but my experiments were collecting a lot of data, time series data. And I had them running for months. So I had to learn how to deal with all this data. So that kind of, it was just super exciting and fun to play with it. Then I learned, I met the CEO and the VP of sales at Well Data Labs, and they offered me to work there while I was still finishing my master's. And then even more fascinated with the amount of data that we're collecting from the field. And like Sharon mentioned, like that wasn't being used. So I came in to just try to figure out a way to use this data and partner with our customers and with other vendors to show the industry like we can use this data. It's super useful. We can help you be more efficient in your operations. And, I was there for 5.5 years, and I loved working there, but it came to a point that I was like, I really love the data science world. And I feel like it's time for me to stay completely outside of my comfort zone and be in a new industry and learn something totally new.
And that's where you are now. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. So it's when you tell stories about being you said on a ship. Did you say on a ship that you were one of 2 women on a ship with 18 men? I feel like we could have a whole reality TV show based on that alone. But I'm sure that gender dynamics in that environment or other environments that when you're in the field that you found yourself in, can you talk a little bit about how that has come into play in your career at large?
Yeah, for sure. Especially being a younger female leading a crew of older men. When
that's the key right there.
Yeah.
Leading a crew of older men. How did that happen? How did that work out?
So, I definitely learned a lot. And initially for me, it was, super overwhelming. And then I felt like this little girl that is trying to tell like all these grown men what to do. And they would look at me like, oh, you're so cute. And then, initially for me, it felt like I had to prove myself. Like I know what I'm doing. I just have to prove myself for them to listen to me and create like that relationship. And that was like my initial kind of experience in that environment. Then I was moved to Ecuador to work for a few months in the jungle. And then I had to like kind of start over again because I didn't have that rapport with the crew there. And it felt even a little harder because there was also the cultural difference. Even when we speak the same language, it's still, a different culture. And you have to kind of like get into that, create that relationship. And that felt way harder for me than back home. Then I moved to Italy and it's kind of the same, right? And then I moved here. So I realized initially, I was like, I just have to prove myself to these people and then they will know that I am capable and I can do this job. And then I realized it was more of a trust, not issue, but it's a period of trust. And I've learned that whether when I hire someone or when I step into a new role or when I get a new boss, it's like there is a period when you have to create that trust. And it's not necessarily I have to prove myself, but they have to prove themselves to me. but we have to create that rapport for us to trust each other and be like, okay, I know you're capable, but I just still need to see that we can work together, that this, work relationship is going to be successful. So I've learned to have that grace period, or to give myself and give others that grace period of we're just in a creating trust period. And once we achieve that, we're going to be productive. But initially there's going to be that barrier, whether it's gender, culture, age, or just trust issues.
Right. So, I mean, those are all like, it sounds like they're biases, right? Like these are things that people see you, they see that you're a young woman and, you're coming from a different culture, and then they have a perceived notion of sort of how that interaction is going to go with you. And you're talking about sort of leading with, you said a grace period, but it's like leading with grace, right? You are allowing for somebody else to have their opinion, or to enter the relationship with you with their preconceived notion, and you are giving them a grace period of time to sort of like get to know you. And I just feel like it's worthwhile to say, in this day and age of our great divide that we have in our society, that I think that is a fabulous, not only work lesson, but it's a life lesson, that if we can all just try to be a little more empathetic and give people grace period, maybe we would be a little bit better off as a society. So I think I just want to commend you on that, because you mentioned that initially when we spoke, and I was sort of floored that that's how you're leading. So
and you mentioned biases. Biases are just perceptions. Like we have built a perception with someone or a group of people, and then it's really hard to break that perception and say, actually, that's just in my mind. It's not really, it's not a reality. It's not the truth. And we all have them, and it's really hard to deal with them. But especially, I think when we, the way as I mentioned with the grace period, the other, I would say the other thing that my other tool that I use is always thinking that the other person is doing their best, and not attaching that to a perception or a bias that I have about the person, whether because they're younger or older or whatever. Not to think like, oh my God, this person just don't know what they're doing because X. But just change that narrative to they're doing their best, and this is what they can do. And whether I am not provided, if it's a person that reports to me or works with me, it's like either I'm not provided the resources for them to be successful, or really this is their capability, and I'm not setting them up for success because I'm asking them to do something they are not capable to do.
This is great. You're talking about empathy, and you're talking about putting yourself in other people's shoes, and also looking at the relationship or the situation and thinking, what can I do better here as well, right? So these are very grown-up concepts, Jessica. I appreciate this. Okay, so let's go back to the top. So thank you for all that insight. And I'd like to start with Lisa again. I'd like to go kind of round robin through everybody. And this is a question that I love to ask. I ask it in Healthy Women Leaders, and I ask it for GDM Women. I ask it all the time, is what is a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self? If you could stand there with that woman, that eager young woman of, maybe 20 years ago or something like that, what would you tell her? And Lisa, we'll start with you.
Excellent question. I would say know your worth. I kind of consider myself a bit of a late bloomer. Mm-hmm. And so really, if you don't believe in your thoughts or ideas, no one else will. Mm-hmm. So really focus in on understanding your worth, know what you like, know what your passions are, know what you're good at, and then stand by those things.
Yeah. Believe in yourself. Absolutely. I feel I can't agree with you more. I feel like sometimes when the world seems to be crushing in, or you feel like you're nervous or something, I'm like, just like, girl, you got this. Why not you? Why not you? If any one of you amazing women can sit here and tell your story today, why not somebody else who's listening on the call? There's no reason why. So I think that's fantastic. So Sharon, same question to you. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah, there's so much.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the big ones is that the world is not equitable yet. Mm-hmm. I think when I grew up, the women's movement, I was told, is come and passed and everything was fine. And you're going to go into the workforce and you have the same opportunities as everybody else. And I quickly, well, I learned that that was not necessarily the case, but it took me a really long time to realize it, because I kept self-reflecting and kept thinking, there must be something wrong with me. There must be something that I don't know yet, that I need to go and continue my education and learn so that I am perceived, at the same level as my peers. And so I had a lot of insecurities just about myself. So yeah, I went and got a master's. I then went and got an MBA, right? And it was after I got my MBA, we were sitting in and I've never told this story, and I probably think about it every single week, at least once a week for the last 10 years, 15 years. We were just acquired by a public company, so my small startup, and we were sitting getting a lunch and learn on what it's like to be a public company and reporting and financials and reporting to Wall Street and all that sort of stuff. And so they put up a slide that had FASB on it, the Financial Accountants Standards Boards or something like that. And it was me in a room of 15, 20 guys above my pay grade. And they asked, does anyone know what this is? And I just blurted it out. And everybody in the room turns and looks at me, was like, how did you know that? And I sat there and I said, the dog I adopted was named FASB. And I didn't say, it's because I went to business school and I learned, and I took 2 semesters of accounting. So I was already how do I say it? I was diminishing my own worth and value, right? Because I didn't want to, when I reflect on it, I realized I didn't want to make other people feel bad. Yeah. I didn't want them to feel bad about it. And I think back on that now and I'm like, why did you do that? Why couldn't you have that confidence to say, hey, I knew this. I know what this is. I know how to, read the standards every year, or that they come out and X, Y, Z. So I really take that as a lesson of, there's the imposter syndrome, that we all live with. I just saw a post on a woman I follow on Instagram about imposter syndrome that just this morning, and every comment on it was like, me too, me too, me too, right? And I think it's finding that voice. And being confident, just what Lisa said, it's like being confident in who you are and what you know, and not being afraid to speak that, right? And sometimes it might be difficult for it to land, but it's really important that you believe in yourself, right? And you believe in the knowledge that you have. And so I wish I could write that letter to my younger self coming out of grad school, because I would have saved a lot of money on masters and MBAs and all of that stuff.
Oh man, what you're talking about is making yourself small. Women have a tendency to we diminish, or we sort of turn down some of the power or the worth, like Lisa was talking about. And I think that is a fantastic piece of advice, is that the way that we get the world to be more equitable is that we stand strongly on our own 2 feet in our power, with your big, fantastic, beautiful brain, that you knew something that everybody else didn't know, and we fully own that. So I feel like that's a fantastic piece of advice. And it's really, when you start to dig in and kind of peek under the covers of the ways that women even have in their speech patterns of sort of turning down, what they're saying so that it lands more softly. There's a lot going on behind that. So that's another fantastic piece of advice. And then, so Jessica, the same question to you. What is the advice that you would give to your younger self?
I don't want to already repeat what Lisa and Sharon already said. So, but definitely be more confident. I would say kindness and humbleness can go really far in professional relationships. It comes to a point that, going back again to my younger, career, where I always felt like I had to prove myself and kind of yell, I know what I'm doing. This is, I can be in charge of this operation. And always trying to prove myself. Came to a point that now in my career, I'm more like, I'm going to take a step back. I'm just going to, let things sit in, and my moment is going to come where I'm going to, I don't have to like all the time be that person, but yeah, and just building again on what I mentioned before, being kind and humble and understanding what the other person is capable or not capable of doing, and always expect, like, knowing that, not thinking that they're always against you. It's not personal. All these biases and all these things that we still have to deal with, like being in a meeting and the men saying something, or me proposing something and then the men repeating and everyone agrees with men. And you're like, I just said that. I have to repeat myself every time. Like, this is not personal. This is just like all of our biases. You just still is so embedded in our society. So being kind to myself to not get upset, but also to others to understand that, there's still a lot to do to remove a lot of these biases.
Mm-hmm. I think there's so many truths in that. Now, what you just said might be one of the big keys of all, is be kind, especially to yourself first. Like, give this girl some credit, right? She's doing a really good job figuring out some tough stuff, and the world isn't equitable and there are biases, and you're still kind of working through it and showing up every day. And that's fantastic. And then also, like, kindness is leading with kindness, like you said, and kindness can be contagious too. Like, we all know about contagions right now and things that have the potential to go viral in any way, shape, or form. And I think that kindness is the same. And when you approach your day-to-day with a little bit more of that, that can help to positively influence the people that you come into contact with. And that can help the further people that they go with too. So I think that that's a fantastic piece of advice. And I thank you all so much. This is like, this conversation is just so inspiring to me, not only to talk to powerful women that are doing these amazing things in the world of data and analytics, but also like life lessons along the way. And how do we be nicer to each other and have more confidence and be brave? And this is fantastic. So thank you all so much. We have just a few minutes left, so I'd love to open it up on the chat. If anybody has any questions, they are free to add them in, and we'll see if anything comes through. So what'd you think, Julie?
I loved it. It was just as good as last year. I swear, you ladies are amazing, amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching the chat, and so we had a lot of great comments that, of course, we'll capture, and I think everyone was seeing. But I think this was just as good as our first annual. So it looks like we're going to have a third annual.
Yeah, that's it. Every year. We'll do it every year now. That's great. Okay, so I don't see any questions coming through, and we will be mindful of the time. We have just a couple minutes for everybody to rush off to their next thing. We all know there's another thing. But again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Rowan, Lisa, Sharon, Jessica, Julie,
Oh, you're
thank
great.
you all for showing up today. And this has been fantastic.
Thank you, Kalia, for all your hard work on this, and everyone. Take care. Have a great
Awesome.
day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.